How's it going, everyone? Quick little recap on this week's price action. So this is the SPX chart. We have had a 3-day straight decline with lower lows, except for Friday where we had a higher low into this SR area, which was former all-time high. After breaking back up through this SR zone, after we had broken down from this long-time uptrend, right? We hit this 1.618 level, which is historically relevant as a local or cycle top, as you can see over here. For example, the 2022 top to bottom drawdown, we have the 1.618 and the 2 marked over here, all the fib extension levels. And as you can see, when we hit the 1.618, we had a deep retrace back into 1.272. Then we hit the 2.0 level almost perfectly within a dollar, hit it, and then that was the local top, or the top for that cycle. And then we had a huge decline back down to 48.50, or even lower, 48.36. So that kind of aligns with what? The 1.0 level. So looking over here, we hit the 1.618. It gives credence, to the idea that this is going to be a local top. We have a pullback down to 500. Take out all these lows over here, a lot of resting liquidity below, and then could continue higher. Now, will that happen, or will a move to retest this truly and then come back down? I'm not sure. I think a move up to here higher is still likely, just because we are still above the moving averages on the daily, above them on the weekly. We did break down from this uptrend. However, all that being said, I think we can get a move retesting this uptrend in truth, because we didn't really quite get it. I know this kind of counts, but it's not that deep of a retrace to really factor it in. If you want to see like a really good example of what I'm talking about, look at the Bitcoin chart. So Bitcoin right here, I'm just going to zoom in, or zoom out rather. This is the Bitcoin chart going way back. So since 2013, you have had this uptrend held, right? Here, 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 and then it broke down from it. And what happened? Well, for several weeks, from November 2025 all the way up until January 2026, where it hit this uptrend for the last time, we have had consolidation, chop in what is effectively a bear flag. Okay, we tapped it a couple different times, but really it wasn't until we had this nice tap over here with a good chunk of volume right there. Whoops, right here you see the volume spike. That was the local high, and then we came back down lower, chopped around here after breaking down from the bear flag, and then are just on a straight decline now at 77,500. So if you look at something like Bitcoin, it kind of spells it out as to what can happen for SPX, meaning that we had this decline from the uptrend. It does not necessarily mean that you immediately have now a push lower. Oh, we lost the uptrend, it's just fucking over. No, we have a lot of chop over here. Big players, big monies, positioning for downside. This takes weeks and weeks to do, because it's billions and billions of dollars that they have to carefully, place into here. And then slowly but surely, the formation flows, and nothing. It's slow until it isn't, and then you have these deep declines. So all I'm saying is something similar could happen to SPX and NASDAQ and the American indices. We have a very similar pattern of historical uptrend, breakdown, consolidating really back into it. Everyone's thinking this was a fake out. And then last moment, it's, do or die. We hit this level, and then it just fucking dies and comes back down lower. So do be wary of something like that happening with SPX. Now to the star of the show, really, gold and silver. So gold and silver have had an insane week, insane like last year, not including January. Just this whole last year has been historic for gold and silver. And yesterday, Friday, was even more historic. So we had a 14% decline on gold on the day, silver down 35%. Some exchanges less liquid. Gold was down over 20%, silver down over 45%. It was bad. It was the single biggest decline in precious metals history, in the history of gold and silver. Not in percentage terms. Gold has had worse days, silver never. But in terms of the like money lost, it was the single biggest loss ever. So what happened? Why did this happen now? Two reasons, I think. One, just simply it was just a matter of time, right? I mean, just look at the gold chart. So, when do you have parabolic rises like this without parabolic declines, right? I mean, it was getting a little ridiculous at this point how much it was moving. Gold and silver up over 10% on a day, and these are both well over $10 trillion assets. It just became a little ridiculous, right? So a decline was overdue. It was bound to come at some point or another. But really, the specific thing that triggered it, because it was not a coincidence that this happened on Friday, but the specific thing that triggered it was that Trump announced his Fed chair pick. And who did he pick? He picked Kevin Warsh. Now, Kevin Warsh, I was not familiar with him, honestly. The whole decision was very out of left field because no one had anticipated that Trump was going to pick him, someone who is hawkish. They were anticipating that he was going to pick like Kevin Hassett or Stephen Moran, right? Who are two people who are constantly talking about like, we need to reduce interest rates down to zero. We need to do quantitative easing. We need just all this extra fuel to the fire. And people thought, we're pricing in just more debasement, more dollar inflation, and therefore buy gold to offset it, right? It's the only thing you can. Well, Kevin Warsh gets nominated. That throws a wrench into things because he's over here talking about how the Fed has or should have a balance sheet that is 1/10 of what it is right now. He's talking about how interest rates should probably be higher. He's talking about QE and the Fed and monetary policy from Congress being the reason that inflation is as high as it is today, and we need to practice fiscal and monetary responsibility. So, just think about it. It kind of throws the debasement trade out, right? So, while it's not necessarily going to kill it, because I think there are huge structural problems with and just like the damage from printing 40% of the money supply since COVID happened is just too severe to fundamentally like to put that genie back in the bottle. It does kind of hamper that trade thesis in the short term, which is why gold and silver and Bitcoin and all these like hard capped assets dumped a lot, and why equities did not dump as much, because equities, you get a return on your investment, right? Gold, unless it gets turned into a product, is fundamentally worthless, right? It's at the end of the day just a rock, right? If I can't turn that gold into something, or if I can't sell the gold on an exchange, it fundamentally has no use case. Equities, stocks, and stuff like that, they represent the companies themselves, who represent a product that generates a profit. And so that profit is, has intrinsic value in and of itself, and why equities are not as reliant on the debasement trade. It's mostly like the AI trade, increasing productivity, decreasing costs, cutting labor force, etc., etc., right? So, but nonetheless, huge decline. What do I think is going to happen? I think, to be honest, we could see a decent drawdown or a lot of chop on gold before it continues higher. I think eventually at some point in the near future, we are going to have that Q1 dump, and it's going to be massive. At which point, once that happens, then we should really look to load up on gold and such. But until that happens, really, like, honestly, I don't know what's going to come up in the short term. Things are just so volatile, and the news environment is constantly changing. Nonetheless, though, my theses for the year as a whole have not changed. So long commodities, long more specific niche tech, so things like photonic interconnectivity, things like RAM, SSD storage, energy, still very bullish on energy, whether it's oil, nuclear, gas, even solar. Still bullish China, still bullish robotics and drones. But all this volatility over here is showing that we could have some big time pain ahead, which is why I am heavily considering getting some hedges this week on SPX. With that being said, y'all, thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to join the Discord group, link is going to be in the description. And yeah, good luck next week. I'm going to be releasing a watch list video later as well. Big week ahead with earnings again. We just had a lot of tech earnings last week, and it's going to be continuing this week. So still got to stay diligent, stay sharp, keep an eye on the markets, on the news especially. The news is what will fuck you up, because like the TA, while the TA is still working, obviously, the news drops are acting as catalysts for these moves. So you need to be on top of it when it comes to the news. If you are not, then you're going to get cooked. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.